Welcome back to Bass Fishing Dive Bar. Last episode, me and Kurt gave you a cranking episode, explained our confidence baits, how we fish them, how we crank in general, and went into pretty good detail. Today is going to be all flipping. And
spinning around, going from one extreme to another.
Exactly. My flipping is very limited here. I don't have a whole lot of opportunities to do it. Typically, it's when we get a lot of rain, late winter, early in the spring, and all those bushes up on the bank get flooded. And I flip bushes. I used to flip tulies quite a bit. Don't do that near as much as I used to. But Kurt lives in flipping heaven, and in the episode, well, I've been there, and it's flipping heaven. It's not punching, for the most part. So you do have a little bit of that, but from what I saw, it's a lot of flipping, some vegetation, and a lot of wood.
A lot of wood, riverbank.
And if you guys listen to the rapid fire episode with Kyle, flipping is Kurt's strength. So I'm gonna give a little bit of input here and there on what I see in my part of the country. But Kurt's going to give you guys a pretty good schooling on flipping in this one.
Well, we'll see how much I want to tell. you might have to Q&A to get some. You're going to have to Q&A some stuff out of me. You're going to have to get me a handful more good boys in me and really start asking the deep, dark questions.
Well, I'm going to start mine right now. I'll get brave and get it all out of you.
Well, first I want to just touch on something that you mentioned. So you said tulies, and we don't. There's parts in the Midwest where we call them tulies, but for the most part, we call them bulrushes. So and essentially they're just pencil reeds, bulrushes. They're tulies. It's
pencil reeds.
And then you have
it's round.
Yep, it's round like a pencil, and your tulies are pretty tall. Like that's what I like to find tall ones.
They're very tall.
Yeah. But we have multiple different ones. There's multiple species. They all can hold fish at certain times, but they're a hard bottom weed. And I'd say if you're, tip number one about flipping grass, if you can find grass with hard bottom in it, that's where the fish are going to be. That seems to be the best. So, all right. Well, where do you want to start?
Well, we started with tulies and vegetation. Let's talk about flipping shoreline vegetation to start.
Okay. All right. So anything like those pencil reeds, tulies, cattails, aka bulrushes, wild rice. You guys don't have that. We have a lot of that. I don't think they have that in a lot of the country, but we have a ton of it up north here. Wild rice. And then you got...
Let's talk about...
lily pads as well. We've got some stuff called arrowhead grass, and I classify all those weeds together as they're hard stalk root systems, I guess I'd say, or stems. This isn't like milfoil or this other stuff where you can set the hook and it just cuts through it. So let's see.
Let's start with what do you look for in that vegetation visually when you're flipping that? What are you looking to flip to? Number one.
I like anytime I have two different vegetation types coming together. So if I'm on a lake that has milfoil in it, I want to find areas that the milfoil sort of meeting up into or is mixed into the tulies or the cattails or the bulrushes. With about anything, if you can get two different types of cover blending together, seems to gravitate fish. But any of that stuff that grows up out of the water, it's floating on the surface, there's not much to it below the surface, it sure seems like they like points. So if you can have a point that's made by that weed bed, or that's where a lot of times them fish are. And they're going to be some days out on the tip of that stuff. Some days they're just inside of those points. Inside turns is another one. You know, if you go down and it's just a straight wall for a mile, you know, the fish can be anywhere and everywhere. And those fish are trying to find ambush points as well. So sometimes a point can simply be it's real thick here and then it gets sparse around it. And you just got to imagine that, well, that's making a point, even though it's not as obvious. It's still a point.
It's kind of like a soft point.
Yeah. Good way to explain it. Yep. So the big thing with that stuff too, what most people are going to want to do is they're going to want to spool up some heavy braid right off the get-go. They're going to think, oh, this is going to be like milfoil or coontail or hydrilla or something. If I flip braid in it, I'm going to cut through it. This stuff you can't cut through with braid. Think of it more like wood. You know, if your braid gets wrapped around, it digs in a little bit. It's just locked there. I use a lot more fluorocarbon, and it's one of the few times that I've started to, with a bait caster, start playing a lot more with braid to a heavy fluorocarbon leader and FG knot it. I've had good luck with it because you're sort of getting the best of both worlds. Run a pretty long lead, you know, at least a 7-8 footer, just enough that when I pitch, my knot isn't in my tip top when I'm making that pitch. So, and probably the heavier the better. I mean, I run 25 or 30 pound shooter is what I use most of the time for that type of fishing, and a pretty stout rod. The last couple of years, it's been a NRX 895 JWR, so a 7.5 extra heavy jig and worm rod, either in the original NRX or the NRX Plus line. This year, I'm going to play a little bit around with that. You know, last year they came out with that new GLX flip in that's a 711. I'm going to play around with that a little bit. Never been a 711 guy, but you know, going to play around with it a little bit.
So when you're talking about walls of tules and long stretches with no indentations, that's a lot of what we have. Just solid. And when I say walls, I mean a solid wall of tules. That's one of the reasons why I haven't really flipped a whole lot in the last few years, is because these tules are so strong and so thick. And when I say so strong, the plant is so strong, it's growing so strong that there's almost no gaps. There's very, very little gap in these tules. These fish actually have to push through that stuff to get through it. I mean, they're maybe an inch wide, you know, in most parts. When it's thinner, like when we get a fire and it'll burn some of that stuff off, or if the water comes way down for a long time and that stuff dies and it comes back up and that stuff starts growing a little bit more sparse, that's when we'll really start to flip quite a bit. Or if the water comes way up and floods it almost completely, and you can get on the backside wall and fish the backside and some of the newer stuff growing on the inside of that. Like, if you want to call it a weed edge, it's an inside tule line. We'll do a lot of flipping in that situation too. But dude, the tules we have right now, they are hard to flip because it is so solid. It's hard to get a bait into a spot with what we have.
Are your tules green year round?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And that's a lot of it. Like here they grow up. They start turning green. You know, sometime mid-May, end of May, early June, and then they, you know, some of them only grow 6 inches tall above the water. Some of them grow 6 feet out of the water. Depends on the species of that pencil type reed. But then obviously most of that stuff grows in 2 feet of water or less here. So every winter, ice freezes up, locks it up. If that ice gets moved around, it can pull the stuff out. But it is like in the spring when those fish come in shallow to spawn, because that is more of a hard bottom type vegetation growth, you get pre-spawn fish around them dead stalks every spring because it's a radiator. You know, it's the sun beats on that dark stalk, heats up the water around that pretty well, and that stuff is pretty dang productive early in the year before it's even starting to grow green for the years. So and that's probably why ours, I mean, we have places where it's pretty thick every year, and it's all about finding that stuff, and then there'll be a little part over here that's maybe a little thinner, or maybe there's some areas where there's some of that arrowhead grass I discussed. I don't know the technical name. I've heard people call it spearhead grass, arrowhead grass. It grows up to the surface of the water, and then it's a vine like across the water, and each little leaf on it's about 2.5 to 4 inches long, shaped like a old Indian arrowhead or spear head. So a lot of times it can just be that. They'll get up against all of that stuff, but they're in that stuff using that that bulrush or those Thule walls as no different than they would a seawall or just the bank, But yeah, sometimes you get all excited. You see that nice, good looking cane bed from across the lake, and you drive over there, and it's exactly what you're saying, where it's like, well, the fish can't be in here. They can move around it, but they can't be in it. That's going to be too much effort.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and some of our stuff is in 10 foot of water, and you got 6 feet sticking out. So it's a 16-foot tall Thule.
Yeah.
Or pencil reed, or whatever you want to call it. They're huge.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I would say here probably 4 foot's about the max you ever see in it, maybe 5. Wild rice seems to, especially water level, if they get established and the water's low and then the water goes up slow enough, it'll just keep growing. But it's definitely more of a 4 foot and less, But I've caught them where there's only 6 inches of water in the things. Some days I think it's better when there's less water in it. They can't move around. They're a little more predictable when they can't move around that much. Through them,
they're limited as to where they can be. They're almost they're predictable in where they're going to set up and that kind of stuff. That makes sense.
Because if it's 4 feet or plus through the whole bed, like they can be anywhere in it. Places you don't even want to take your boat in there. And here, and you can't take your boat into that. A lot of that stuff, especially if it's wild rice. You can't take your boat in that here. So yeah, you're pretty limited. If it's deep throughout the whole thing, you could have fish 3 casts away. I've seen that on Leech Lake up in Minnesota. Like, it is just wild rice for as far as you can see. I mean, you can see the shores a mile away, and it's nothing but wild rice that whole way, and it's all 4 feet deep. You wonder why the place is so loaded with fish. There's fish in there that don't see a bait all year. So, yeah. Quick, am I good on your end? You getting me all right on your end?
You look great. You look great. Right. You sound great.
All right, just making sure.
So when we're talking, let's call it vertical vegetation that you're fishing with pencil reeds, wild rice, all that stuff. What kind of baits are you flipping in that kind of stuff typically?
I like a bigger, bulkier bait usually, because my stuff isn't as dense, so I'm sort of leaning on the pull power. Years ago, it was regular brush hog, which I don't have on handy. They're buried away where I couldn't reach them. So if you want to hold up a old school brush hog,
I'll grab one for you.
What is that? Like 6.5 inches long?
Not even. It's about 5. Oh, full size. Full size is about 6 inches long. I've got a baby brush hog right with me, and this is what when I was learning how to flip. This is one of the first things that I learned how to flip in Thule's.
Yeah,
the baby brush hog. Kurt's talking about the full size, which is a little bit bigger than this.
Yeah, I think it's almost 6. I think it's 6.5 inches. It's a big bait. I mean, it's double that as far as girth and everything of the body. I mean,
the one thing about the brush hog that is kind of a pain in the butt at times. These little tails will get wrapped up, but it's well worth it.
Yeah. The tails will hook on your vegetation when you first flip it in there, if the vegetation is above water, for sure. What has sort of replaced the baby brush hog for me, and I like it just because it has a little more body and bulk, but it isn't such a big bait, is this is a Reaction Innovations Man Bear Pig. So you can see it's just got that wider body, almost reminiscent of a Reaction Innovations Sweet Beaver. The flaps on the side are definitely longer than what you see on your baby brush hog, but the tails themselves are about the same. I would say these tails, though, are just a little thinner. So they definitely give you more of a slight finessey flicker. I really like this bait. Glides nicely, because a lot of times in the Thule's, as you'd call them, I don't want a heavy bait. I fish this on a 5/16 a lot. I'm letting it sort of drift worm through the cover. I'm letting my line get caught on stuff and letting that bait not always go all the way to the bottom. It's one of the few times where I am always erring a little more on, can I go a little lighter? If I'm flipping wood or, your traditional milfoil and that type of stuff, I'm always a little bit like, this fast fall gets me bites that the slow fall don't. But with this stuff, it seems like more that bluegill undulating, just sort of, chilling out, tooling around in them. It gets me bit better most days.
And you're not dealing with horizontal structure with those vertical vegetations where you're letting a bait fall behind something where you want a weight to pull it down. It's all vertical. You can kind of slither your bait through this stuff, and it will in sparser vegetation, not the kind of stuff that I was talking about earlier, that solid wall, but if it's sparse enough, baits will glide through that stuff.
Yeah.
You don't need a heavy weight.
And there is stuff that is like we get because the wind will blow it over or something. We get a fair amount actually of that stuff knocked over. So we are casting
but
here, like
edge,
you are flipping over that. No, it's even up in there a lot of times. You know, there's a lot of times I'll be a full boat length into that stuff. There might be a little patch of arrowhead grass or a little patch of dollar grass, which are like miniature, lily pads. Another secondary weed or a third weed type in amongst that, and fish will be around that. So yeah, and that's where you do have to play that game of, now I need a heavy enough bait that will get through that stuff, deflect a little bit, but stay somewhat on track. And that's where a 7/16 is generally where I start going up to. But then I use a different bait. For years now, outside of using something like this is a Crush City bait. That's another one I've been playing with a little bit. This, if it's a little thicker, just seems like this body holds on my hook better, and I don't tear it up as fast as I do the Man Bear Pig. But I actually, I didn't pull one off. Where are they? Instead of a tube, which you can hold up a 5-inch tube, because that's what I always used to throw, is a 5-inch tube. But this is one of these baits that when I first saw this bait, I was like, this thing, I don't get it. I don't understand what it's all about. And it just happened to, thanks to social media one day, the video of it underwater came across my screen, and I was like, oh, I get it. That thing moves like a crayfish in the water, even though the appendages don't look like claws and it looks sort of silly. But this is the Bronco bug. And there's some Japanese baits like this out there that have sort of a similar action, but this is a bulky bait. Like, you put this with a 7/16, like, it's a lot of weight on the end of your line. I'd say it fishes as heavy with your cast as a 5/8 ounce jig would, which is sort of my go-to jig weight for trying to push through that type of vegetation. But it fishes light in the water. It's not a real heavy bait in the water, so I can force this through all that standing cover, not deflect off my my cast path very far, put it where I want it, but then still fish it somewhat light through that stuff and have that it stays up, it goes full, and it flutters down. It's not just in there pummeling to the bottom. And I find here a lot of if you're catching fish in those bulrushes, they're throwing up crayfish this big. They're throwing up big rusty crayfish this big. It's part of the reason why I've always liked a big tube. It's why this sort of replaced the big tube for me. I like that I can just throw a big straight shank in this, and I'm not dealing with the inherent, hookup ratio issues that I get with a big 5-inch tube sometimes. But yeah, I mean, that's the Texas rig stuff that I use. When it comes to a jig, I fish 2 different jigs in this. Guys can, if you're just going to flip the edges, you can flip something like this. This is a Matt Heron flipping jig from Dirty Jigs. It's more your Arky style head, pan-shaped head. I use this jig for docks quite a bit. I like this jig a lot. Got a random weed guard strand. But I do not like this in that type of cover at all. I don't like a 60-degree flat eye in that. I
was going to say, the line tie is wrong for that situation.
Yeah. This is a 3/4, but I usually use this, a 3/4 or 5/8 ounce Canterbury flipping jig, or a 7/16 or 9/16 compact Canterbury flipping jig. And I've gotten to where the compact is the one I throw the most. It's a 4/0 hook. I put I thread on a full super chunk, which I got right here. And I'll just thread this on quick. I feel that this bait really comes through the cover nice. The compact has a wire keeper instead of a lead keeper. So it's very, very weight forward, just like your Texas rig would be. yes, that wire keeper is going to tear up a chunk on you. And no, I didn't trim that skirt, but I mean, that's not a tiny jig. It is a compact jig, but it's not super tiny. I'd probably cut 1/2 inch or so off that skirt, but you know, you look at it in my hand, you know, and that thing just, those trailers just flutter nice with it. I just like everything it does. And being that it's all the weight in the nose, like your Texas rig, when you do put it somewhere, it goes straight down. You feed it a little line, it's going straight down. It's not gliding around. It's not, you know, you want, when anytime you're shallow water flipping, you want your jig to go where you cast it. Like, that's important because you're casting to an object or you're casting to a fish's position. You're not, you know, it's not like a ledge or a point where you can cast way beyond and drag it in, or, you know, it's horseshoes and hand grenades. You want to be able to get it on top of their head, gently control your cast, and then also bring the fish back out of there. It's the other thing I don't like. Some guys like a longer rod. I don't know. I felt like a longer rod a lot of times because your line's up above. You just tangle the tops of all the bulrushes. Not with you if they're 6 foot tall or plus, but a lot of ours where they're only, you know, 4 foot tall. A lot of times it's set the hook hard, and you get that rod sideways and keep your line down so that you keep that line in between them. As soon as you get that line up and that fish tries to swim this way, it's knocking them down here, knocking them down there. Next thing you know, they'll run a circle around a four foot group of that thing. Up. Yeah. So that's how I approach
since
those.
We're still on that vertical.
Yeah.
Yeah. Since we're still on that vertical vegetation thing, one thing I used to do, as a tournament fisherman, if I know fish are in Thule's, in that shallow stuff, whether they're guarding fry, eating bluegill, doesn't matter. If I'm looking for a few bites and I know there's fish in there and I'm looking for a quick few bites, just a 6-inch robo.
Yeah.
On probably no more than a 1/4 ounce weight. You know, actually probably a 3/16 ounce weight is kind of my go-to, and just pitch into shade in that kind of stuff, and a little bit of an opening in a little bit of a shade pocket where you can get a bait in there. I used to flip a 6-inch robo a lot for just those few bites that you needed. You know, flipping is typically looked at as a big fish deal. You're flipping to win, but you can flip for bites too. Yeah. You know, it's not just, you know, a 1 or 2 bite thing. You're flipping a big bait to go, you know, you got 5 fish in the bag and you need to go get a big bite. It's not just a big bite thing. You can flip up a limit, flipping small stuff too.
Yeah. And that's where, you know, you'll do that. And I think that straight worm thing is, you know, a bit of a West Coast thing. You know, obviously Robo Worm's from the West Coast. But here for me, the 2 baits that I would throw in that circumstance this is the 3.5-inch Scrown Bug from Strike King. That's a bait that I've started to fish more and more. The more I fish it, the more I like it the last 3-4 years, pretty much since they came out with it. And then the other one's just Reaction Innovation Smalley Beaver.
How do you say that again?
A Scrown Bug, I think. I don't know. I had you read the package. How do you think?
You got it wrong again. Strike 3.
No, Scrown Bug.
Scown Bug.
Scown Bug.
There's no R, buddy.
They named it bad.
Scown Bug.
No one knows how to say it.
Yeah, they did.
Huh?
Yeah. If you got kids and they've watched Avatar, that's an Avatar name. Scown.
Oh, is it? That's where it came from?
It is. I don't know if that's what it was named after, but that's what they call him in the movie. Scown.
But so these tails don't have a real wide flap. You know, when this falls, those don't spread out wide like a regular rage crawl would. They stay pretty much in their position and just give you a nice little flutter like that. It's pretty finessey.
A little wiggle. I do like the look of that bait.
I like this if I know that they're in there popping on little baby bluegills, because I feel like it has that type of action to it. But yeah, if it's cold front, frontal, nonsense, feel like I have to get bit on something, yeah, I'm going to soak this. I'm going to be very precise about my cast, probably even downsize my line and rod a little bit. But a lot of times it's that shallow water. If you get a nasty hard cold front, I don't know. I feel like there's generally better areas to go fish. That's one thing I will say on that type of vegetation. Unless it's a big mat they can hunker under and just sort of feel hidden, I think they get off a lot of that stuff. They look for deeper water or a break or hard cover, true hard cover, rock bottom, stuff like that. So, but yeah, I mean, I don't think there's rocket science to it. I think most people when they do
typically,
most people when they're fishing this type of stuff, I feel like they get frustrated because it's like you're saying, it's just so much of it. How to break it down? Well, just look for inconsistencies. Look for them points, a soft point, a hard point, inside turn, other vegetation mixed in with that vegetation. Being able to break it down and make it, have more confidence that you're not just randomly casting, right? It makes it a little easier. But I think most people just, they come at it with the wrong equipment and they lose fish. And then they get real frustrated. They lose fish. Having the right equipment, if you think you have the right rod for it, you probably need to buy the next power heavier in the same rod model. And you probably should just go another pound Hest heavier with your fluorocarbon and not even try braid. I've seen it over and over and over again. Guys struggle. I tell them, go buy heavier fluorocarbon, put 30 on there, or put 25 on there. It's coily, it's this and that. No, I'm going to try braid. They try braid. They lose almost every fish because it locks them up and they can't get it out, and then they can't get their bait out, and it's a mess. And just try the fluorocarbon and just keep constant pressure with a stiff rod, and a lot of times they'll come to the boat for you.
So since you're talking braid and fluorocarbon, I'm going to mention, I have noticed certain situations where I get bit more often. We're not even talking about landing fish. I get bit more often flipping fluoro than braid. Mm-hmm. Like I can go a full day flipping braid, get 2 or 3 bites, and the second that I switch to fluoro, 10, 12, 15 bites. And it has nothing to do with them seeing the line. And it has everything, especially when you're flipping wood. And I know Thule's too, especially if you're up over the top of, a laydown Thule, sound.
Yeah.
When you're flipping braid, there is a sound of that line rubbing over your cover, and fluoro does not have that sound.
Yeah. I've noticed a lot with, especially when I started fishing a lot more rods that have titanium recoils or titanium framed ceramic insert guides. That noise, like you're winding in braid and you can hear it. It sounds like saw cutting through something, and you can really feel that over the vegetation. It's impressive how much you can feel. If you've ever had your bait with braid caught in the yoke of a lily pad, and we're able to yo-yo it with braid, you can feel that. It's less if you're using like an 8 carrier versus like an old school Power Pro or an FX2 from Sunline or something like that. That's a low carrier, low pick count. That's real sawy, but you can feel it. It's
so it may not even be sound. It may be a vibration, which translates to sound underwater.
Sound.
It's the same thing on their lateral line. Because they don't have ears, they don't hear, but they feel it.
Yeah, right. So, I'm 100% with you. I rarely throw anything with braid that isn't cast and line type bait, honestly. I use it top water fishing and then run a leader. I do punch with it occasionally with a leader. But I don't have a single flipping stick other than my punching rods that have braid on it. Used to be something we did a lot here when we start talking about the big, more open water milfoil flipping and stuff. We may not get into that today, but like that used to be something like we'd all use braid, and it got to the point where it's like, I wonder how many fish I would have caught if I wouldn't have been using braid all them years. But we didn't have the rods. We had braid. Braid is what allowed us to be able to have strong enough equipment to flip these big haystacks of milfoil, yank a fish out of it, and get it to the boat. For years, you didn't have that. You know, it sort of was like you had mono, right? Yozuri hybrid. That stuff was like bungee. It was like rubber band compared to what we use today with fluoro. And we just didn't have the equipment to attach the line to at that time. Now it's like we got heavier rods than we ever, and we got lower stretch monofilaments than ever. Got braids. Like now you can do it in a million ways, but there definitely is a deterrent to that braid when you start fishing it around cover, sound wise, vibration wise, in my opinion.
For sure. Yep. Absolutely. I notice it more around wood than anything else. That's just, you know, the certain instances that I can think of off the top of my head. That's where I've really I've noticed it, made the change, and seen it work.
Yeah. But, and that's for me. The very first time I flipped Power Pro, when first Power Pro came out, I was working at Gander Mountain at the time. We first got it in the store. I'm like, oh, I can't wait. Can't wait to go flip this stuff on cut banks and wood on the river. And every time I pitched next to a tree, and I was using like 50 pound, you know, I was pretty savvy at the time going, I don't want thin stuff. I need it. It doesn't need to be super thin. I just need it to, you know, not be what mono is, stretch and everything. I lost almost every fish that day because I'd set the hook on a fish and he'd have me around a log just halfway, and then the line had cut into that soft wood. And now you're locked. You can see 3 feet of line and a fish doing this in the water, flashing around, jumping, and your line's just over that log, cut in a 1/4 inch, and that you can't get the braid out of it. So to tell you what that sounds like over wood, it's been 20 years since I flipped braid over a piece of wood. So I couldn't even tell you on that. But I used it a lot for weeds, and I've gotten to where I don't even do that anymore. So I don't know. Any other questions on the vertical cover?
Well, so are you using basically the same gear with the vertical grass or vertical vegetation as you are versus wood?
Yep.
Or is there any change?
No, it's all pretty much the same. I mean, I have rods that I use jig fishing wood and or that, you know, it's 25 to 30 pound test fluorocarbon, and that's what I have all my jigs or my bigger Texas rigs on. And then if I've got to go to lighter weight stuff, then I have a different rod that I use. I pretty much use the same 2 or 3 different rods for both, with the same line on them. You know, unless I'm punching. Punching, I get into some different stuff, but not really.
Mm-hmm.
So, I got...
You want to get into fishing wood?
I mean, I'll show you. Try not to break it since I can't buy a new one. 7.5 extra heavy fast, original NRX, not NRX Plus. It's a little softer than the NRX Plus. This is my jig stick, my big Texas rig stick, whether I'm in wood. And I'll fish everything up to almost, I've done it. I don't prefer it. I feel like 3/4 is the magic stopping point there. But I'll go all the way down to 3/8 is a little on the light side for it, but I will do it if the cover demands it and I want to fish light. And then if I want something that's a little bit just lighter but still has some good backbone and power, wrong one. Dang, things all look the same. This is the one that I've been using for. I mean, I can flip 90% of what I flip with this rod. It's a 894 GLX FPR 7.5 fast heavy. It is their flipping stick. This is something they never did before. They never had a split grip on their flipping stick. So this year they split grip, a little bigger cork up here in case you're a guy that wants to hold it up in front of the reel a little bit more. But those are the 2 rods I pretty much use for everything. And it's just a matter of whether I'm on the
flipping with you last time I was there, right?
What's that?
That NRX is the one that I was flipping wood with you when I was up there, correct?
No, you would have probably actually at that time it would have been. I think we played around with because that was when I just first started using some of the NRX stuff. So that was the 894 JWR, which I would have used my lighter Texas rig stuff but I always felt like that just didn't quite have the backbone I wanted out of that rod. Like the tip was fine, but I just felt like when I set the hook, like there just wasn't enough butt in it. Then for a while I was using the NRX Plus 894, but it still felt the same way. And then when they came out with the GLX and I got my hands on this new flipping stick and the new GLX, I was like, no, this is my. It's just that much more stiffer than those rods were. But it also isn't so stiff that it's like that 895 original NRX, because that one is. I mean, I'd say that one, that 895 is much more of a, what I want to say, probably like half 5/8, 3/4 ounce rod, maybe even unto a 1 ounce if I needed to. Where that other one is like 5/8 starts to feel a little heavy, but it's still, if I put 22-pound test on it, it fits 3/8 ounce in a smallie beaver phenomenally well. So I can get into that finessey riverwood stuff. So when you were here, if you came back here again today, you'd be using one of those GLX flipping sticks. I think that's one of the best all-around flipping sticks ever built. It just works, unless you're getting into that real heavy stuff. So, I don't know. They did make an 895 originally, or they had one listed. I don't know if they actually do, and I've been wanting to get my hands on one, but I got to find somewhere I'm going to order it from, because Tackle Warehouse doesn't stock an 895 GLX flipping, but it was on the G. Loomis website for a while, so I've got to see if that actually is real or not, or they were gonna but never did. One of those things.
Well, before we move out of the vertical vegetation stuff, I'm going to throw one more bait out there. I know it's one that you don't fish, but it's something that I have flipped. Got to open this package up because this stuff stinks. It's something that I have fished in Thule's. I don't know that I've ever gotten a big fish check doing it.
You're going to open up some accent? I would have just, if I was you, I would have just did
hold it up.
I would have did a screen share.
There you go.
It's General.
Accent General. And it was always the Senko. You know, I've always fished the Senko for how many years now? Yeah. But I've been fishing that Accent General a lot the last couple of years, and it's just as good, if not better. I think there's times when that scent, maybe not flipping, because a lot of times flipping is just a reaction bite. That thing comes down on top of their head, they open their mouths and eat it. But I've got so many Generals now that, you know, I'm using less and less Senkos. There's times where I think that scent does make an absolute difference. But same thing as that Robo, not flipping a heavyweight. I'd say 1/4 ounce at the heaviest. It glides. These two, the Tube and the General, fall fairly similar. You know, it's that long, slender body. It'll glide and dart, you know, in different directions on the way down. To me, the Tube is my all-time favorite flipping bait. Not necessarily in Thule's, not necessarily in vertical vegetation. I should probably spend some more time doing that with the Tube. I just have more confidence in other baits in that situation. I flip the Tube in wood.
Yeah. So in that tube, that's a single dip tube. That's more like just a 5-inch gets it, essentially. It is, you know, like the tube.
They don't make this. They don't make this tube anymore. There is something special about this tube. At least I think it's special. This is the Gambler flipping tube, Gambler 5-inch flipping tube. And I bought every single one of them on the internet that I could find. And I got a hold of somebody who knows the owner of Gambler, and they got me some of the packs that they had laying around. But if you notice, look at the body of that bait. Let me see if this thing will focus properly. The body of the bait is a green pumpkin. There it goes. Body of the bait's green pumpkin. The inside of the body and the legs on this thing, or the skirt on this thing, if you want to call it that, is chartreuse. So as that thing's falling and it flares, it'll show chartreuse.
Yeah, you get
and it's just like a little bluegill. Exactly. It's just like a little bluegill fin. You get that flash of chartreuse. And I've got the black one too. Same exact deal. Black tube,
Yeah.
chartreuse on the inside.
Yeah. That was a color that I
Same
fished with
thing.
for a
You
lot of
get that.
years. Yeah.
The black with chartreuse.
Yeah. So this is just a
that-
4-inch because I don't have my 5-inchers in the boat, but you can see that's a 4-inch. See how much bulkier that is? That's the type
That's a
of
double
tube.
dip.
That is the head is dipped. It's basically your tube, but they put an extra layer of plastic on the head of the bait.
Yeah.
That's what I fish for years. I've got 5-inchers like this where you've got about 3/4 of an inch more tail and only a 1/4 inch more body. So you get a lot of undulating action. That's something that I look for in a tube. If I'm flipping a tube, I want more tail length. I want it just big enough that I can, like on this bait, the 4-incher, I want it just big enough I can fit a 3/0 EWG style hook in it. If it's a 5-incher, I want it just big enough I can get a 4/0 in there. I want the rest of it tail. I feel like that movement, that's that tail cut, because that plastic is not soft by any stretch of the imagination. It's usually pretty hard. So
It's hard.
but yeah, I've always been more the bulkier double dip style of tube. That one you got, it's a bulky single dip, but it's just because it's a big core. The tube for it's a big
Exactly.
core.
Exactly.
So, but back to your
move on to
little
fishing
general
wood.
deal. Well, here, hang on. Well, this is sort of with wood. I don't do this as much around the Thulees like you would. You talked about the roboworm. But if you're going to talk about the Senko and Thulees, but more case around wood, instead of a Senko, this is a Reaction Innovations pocket rocket. And I just like that it has that hinge point in there and that extra weight on the end. I feel like I get more of a, tail kick on it and more of this when I do pump it. But then when it's just sitting there, it's just a do nothing worm. I fish a Senko wacky rigged all the time. I rarely throw this. I don't know why. It's a good bait. Done it, but I do like flipping this. That's the only reason I have them in the boat is to flip them.
See, I throw that
All
thing
right,
on a shaky head. I don't flip that.
Yeah. All right,
But,
wood.
yeah,
You want
move
to
on to
talk
wood.
about wood?
Let's talk
Wood?
about wood.
Wood gets
I'll
tricky.
talk for a little bit.
Okay.
Let's talk. So I'm going to start with trees, flooded trees. What we have here when we have the high water is flooded cottonwood trees.
Yep.
And like I said earlier, it's almost always late winter, early spring is when we get a lot of rain.
Mm-hmm.
As with is, pretty typical for the rest of the country. You're getting, snow while we're getting rain. Our lakes come up and flood those cottonwood trees. And by the time all that stuff is kind of settled down and everything's flooded, the shad spawn starts. And everyone's throwing spinner baits around the edges. They're pitching spinner baits up into the trees. They're getting frogs into the trees. But you can't, with the way these trees are set up, you can't get a bait to where some of these fish are doing that kind of stuff. You have to flip to get to where some of these better fish are at. Especially later in the day when that sun gets high, those fish want to bury all the way back into that shade. You can't get a frog all the way back in there sometimes with the leaves and everything. It's not efficiently, at least. And that's when I flip the tube a lot. I've gone behind guys throwing, the spinnerbait and the frog and stuff like that, and absolutely mopped up when nobody else is flipping. So everyone's trying to cover water, and I'm just picking them apart. And every little shade pocket, I can almost call my shot. Half ounce, typically half ounce tungsten weight. I know you hate this hook, but I have grown to really, really love the Owner Haymaker. I don't know if you can see the angle of that hook. It angles out. And we haven't had a flip bite here in a couple years, but this hook, I've proven to myself, it for me, it works. You can't stand it. Explain why.
I don't hook fish good on it. Absolutely do not hook fish well on it. It is what it is. I don't know what it is. That's just my experience.
And every fish that I've ever hit with it is nailed.
Yeah,
So,
and I don't know.
fishing.
I look at it this way. You look at that hook, and that hook's just a wide gap bent open.
It is.
So I made a phone call because me and you talked about this in preparation. So I called my buddy that I fish with most of the time, who was big on, wanting to try that hook too. And I'm like, why was it that I didn't like him so much, other than I lost all the fish on it? He's like, you bent open everyone. Like, what? Yeah, he's like, you had multiple. You came back and the hook point was
bent them even further.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he said the hook point was pointed straight up.
Hard.
That's not possible. That's bad equipment. If you set the hook too hard and the equipment don't hold up, it's bad hook. I move them fish, man.
That's funny.
Yeah, so he said I had multiple that did that. He's like, yeah, but you didn't. He's like, you lost a pile of fish on them.
You freaking slackliner.
I'll wear that hat. I'll wear that hat. I can do a video if you want me to do a video on how to make any extra wide gap hook into that hook. I'll give you a video. I own pliers. Serious.
Yep. There's another thing that I really, really like that hook for, and I'll talk about that bait later in this episode. But I really like that hook. And it could be that I'm throwing lighter gear than you, typically. And I'm not putting the pressure on that hook that you do.
Yeah, you're leaning. You just lean into them. I don't lean into them.
Yeah.
I shake a 20-foot freezer when I set the hook. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so that's basically my wood flipping. I got one more bait I'll talk about. One more bait specifically that I want to talk about.
I want to talk a little bit about your style of wood flipping, the standing tree type stuff. We don't get we get like your flooded trees, like where you're talking about, where the water gets up on the bank and you're flipping flooded trunks or stumps of standing timber. We're not talking about, I guess for this part of the conversation, we're not talking about a tree that's in a reservoir and you're basically flipping the top of it and it's going down 10 feet into it. We're not talking about flipping that. We're talking about flipping trunk.
That's what I'm talking about.
Oh, really?
I'm talking about a 10 or 15 vertical foot tree that is completely covered up with maybe 5 or 6 foot showing on top, or a 20 footer that's got 15, or 10 or 15 covering it up. And you're fishing, like, just depending on how high that water came up, you could be fishing the middle of that canopy, or you could be fishing the top of the canopy. Yeah. You're flipping into the junk of that tree, not the trunk.
Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. The way you were talking, I was like, okay, you're flipping you got 2-3 feet of water came up into these trees and you're just going around flipping that. So, and that's the thing, like, to me, now just me not doing that, we don't have that here. We don't have reservoir fishing like that, right? So for me to have you talk about that stuff, it's like, one, you really got to be critical about when you get into that position where you put your bait where you want that bait, you've got to feed it line. Literally,
yes.
How much are you doing this? You gotta peel line off that reel and let that bait go down vertical through the tops of those trees. It seems like the fish a lot of times in those circumstances, when I've done it, like, they position like suspended crappie in there. They're not always in the top. They're not always at the bottom. They can be anywhere amongst those live branches, essentially, right? So you've got to be able to feed and let that bait fall vertical through that, and then really manage your line. How many bites do you get? You're feeding line and you're like, that shouldn't have stopped.
Yep.
Like, it's critical anytime you're flipping when your bait does that, but when you're fishing a tree that's in 12 feet of water and you might get bit on the bottom or in the first 2 feet, you really got to be conscientious of it.
That is so important. Counting your bait down, knowing how deep you are and counting your bait down. And you will, if you're new to it, you'll catch on pretty quick. Flip, sink to bottom, flip, sink to bottom, flip, sink to bottom. And you'll realize real quick how long it takes you to get to the bottom every flip. And then all of a sudden you'll make a flip, sinking, and we're like, wait a minute, that shouldn't have stopped there. Set the hook.
Yeah. I can't. So when you say you got all these guys throwing spinner baits or crank baits or this or that around that stuff, I don't understand how that's more efficient than flipping it. I mean, I've caught fish in trees like that. Well, just hang on. I've caught fish doing that, but to work a square bill or to work a spinner bait through those trees and really cover that, they seem to always be in a 4 to 4-foot, 3-foot range, whether that's 20 feet of water or 6 feet of water, it's like they're in a tenth of the total depth, right? They're always, so that the deeper it is, it could be, either they're going to be, well, to worm a spinnerbait through that stuff, I feel it takes just as much work as flipping the thing, if you're doing it right. So, and if you get snagged on your spinnerbait, you're breaking it off and wrecking the whole tree.
I'll explain why I think that is, because typically when this happens, the shad spawn is happening. And those fish in the morning, when you don't have that high sun, are out on the edges of those trees, chasing those shad. They're just spawning or on those trees around. And they're pitching spinnerbaits at them, and they're throwing frogs, on those boils, and they're catching those fish. But as soon as that sun gets high, those guys don't adjust. And I go back through them right after them. I mean, I'll catch them flipping while they're doing that. I'd rather flip than do that. I mean, I'd rather catch them on a frog, every day. But typically, I'm catching better quality fish flipping behind them than they are on the frog. And then later in the day, these guys do not adjust. So I go back through there, flipping all the heavier shade pockets of this stuff, catching even better quality fish than I did in the morning. I think typically it's just guys don't adjust.
Little side tip relative to that, the way that I look at that, and I look at any piece of structure that the fish can be in amongst, whether that's weeds, whether that's these trees you're talking about, whether it's a dock. When that light is low, the fish can't see as far. Keep in mind that surface of the water is a mirror, so when the light's low, that light comes in and most of it reflects off the surface of the water, no matter how clear it is. So as the sun gets up, more penetrates through that surface because it's a more direct line, not as much as getting reflected away. Well, those fish can't see as far. So even if they're active and want to feed, they're going to come all the way out to the edge of that shade or the edge of that cover, use the cover as a backdrop and ambush the stuff that comes right by the edge of that cover. As their vision improves throughout the day, they can keep tightening up and get hidden more and more and deeper into that cover and bust out. Not to mention that the bait fish tends to quit using the outer perimeter and starts using just inside of the cover more. And that's why you have to adjust accordingly. That's also why if it's cloudy and maybe a little foggy or something, you could probably go around those trees and throw top water all day, whether it's a frog or a shower blow or whatever else, and they'll come off that tree. You came 8 feet off that tree to eat it. No, he's probably sitting out off the end of something and ate it and came right up. He didn't, so that, and if you ever get the chance to do stuff like that with forward-facing sonar, you'll see it real quick how those fish can change throughout the day.
Yeah.
But I think that's what most people, everything else changes, they don't change, and then they wonder, well, what happened, this, that, or the fish don't bite when the sun's up. No, you don't change. You're not going to keep getting the same response of when.
No, they just stopped eating the frog, or they just stopped eating the spinnerbait. Well, they went somewhere else. Well, they didn't go far, but they went somewhere else where they're not gonna move to eat it.
That comment is one of the most accurate things that people say, that they don't understand really what they're saying. They quit eating a frog. Yes, you're correct. They quit eating a frog. But what you didn't say is they quit eating. They didn't quit eating. They didn't quit eating.
No.
They
repositioned and you did not adjust.
Yeah, most people are like, they quit eating a frog. And they say it like, oh, the fish quit eating. No, they didn't quit eating. They just quit eating your presentation.
Exactly.
So, all right. I don't have a whole lot.
Let's move into the stuff that you do. Your river flipping.
Yeah. Well, what I'm gonna do, we're gonna transition into flooded trees on my end, or probably most of the country's end of things, where the water gets up. Okay. And now all of a sudden you've got these willow trees here, like maple trees are a big thing because like most of our forests now, especially that all the ash died, are maples and willows, cottonwoods, and the water comes up 4, 5, 6 feet during the spring. Well, normally the water's 3 feet from that point anyway. So we only get 2-3 feet into these trees, and you might have 2-3 feet of water, and it's for acres. You ain't getting back in any of it. So all you have to play with is, okay, where's the hard bank supposed to be? Where is that bank normally at? Or where can I get to where there is a bank because the bank is taller and steeper in a certain area? People will go down and they'll just flip all these trees. And yeah, there's a lot of times where you can flip all of those trees and catch some fish here and there. But if you know what to look for that really separates those trees from the 100 previous ones, then you can start really catching fish when it's that big mass, just like we were talking with the bulrushes and the tules. So if you get those flooded trees, where that water is now meeting dirt and dry, where is that closest to the tree? A lot of times that's just the pattern. I don't mean that that's the ones closest to the trees, where the bank is closest to that flooded stump. Sometimes, no, you want it. When you're in current, a lot of times it's where is there just a little bit of current kicking into that woods or kicking out of that woods. Look for current changes. Look for depth changes. Where's the bank the steepest? Where is it the shallowest relative to where those trees are? Any given day, they might be on one or the other. But when you're looking at that whole big massive flat because the water's up and out of the banks, pay attention to those things, because that'll be the difference between you consistently catching fish the rest of the day and being able to run a pattern, or just going down the line of trees flipping every one with no rhyme or reason to it. You just keep flipping to flip. But everything sort of equates the same as you were talking about your trees. Little shade pockets. If that, whether that's dictated by current creating a little eddy off of the tree or the shade is creating a little dark spot, put your bait in there as gently and softly as you can. I would say most people probably stay too far away and then crash their bait in instead of being slow and deliberate and just pulling line old school flipping and dropping it in right where it needs to be on their head. Because if you're slow and quiet, a lot of times some fish just don't care. They'll sit there, and if you're throwing the right bait, you put it on their head, they're gonna go, oh, gotta eat it, and then they eat it.
Yep.
In those circumstances, like you said with your tube, you're throwing a fairly heavy weight on that versus if you're up in tules or something. I want to be very precise with my presentation. So I'm going to throw a jig or a Texas rig, rarely throw anything 3/8. I'm going to throw that 9/16 or 7/16 Canterbury compact flipping jig. I'm going to probably throw a 1/2 ounce Texas rig most of the time. And in those circumstances where I like bulkier short baits, so I will take that Canterbury jig. I'll grab this one. Pull the trailer off of it. This is a full skirt that I made. So like if you go buy one of these, the skirt's not usually this long. It's fairly short. But I'll take that jig, put my fingers over the hook, try to get this. And I run a diagonal. You ain't going to be able to see here. I run a diagonal like that on the bottom.
See it.
Yep. I had to move my hand. And then I match that diagonal from the center towards the top. So if you can see, it sort of goes like that.
It's a V cut.
Yeah. That's a pretty short, bulky jig. That's, to give you an idea, there's a sweet beaver next to that jig. That's pretty small.
Yeah, so for everybody that's listening, the skirt is covering the body of the beaver, and the beaver tails are the only thing sticking out.
Yeah. And then, a lot of guys will use a sweet beaver on the back of that. I don't. I just don't like doing it. A lot of people do. I just have the confidence in it. It's a jig. I'm going to put a chunk on it. And then most of the time on this jig, I'm going to thread a Super Chunk Junior. Up on the wire keeper. Oh, that's how big it is. That's a 7/16 jig. 7/16 jig, smallie beaver. The total length of the smallie beaver is the line tie to the tail on that jig. This is what I love fishing in that shallow flooded brush. If I'm on, I like that bulk. I like the length versus bulk ratio. I don't want super big. I feel like any respectable bass can eat that. It's a nice, short, compact, easy to eat meal.
Mm-hmm.
And it fishes heavy. Like I can put it where I want to put it. You know, I'm efficient with it, but it's not such a big meal. You know, I'm not catch a lot of short fish on that, to be honest with you. You'd be surprised how many short fish you'll catch on that versus a traditional jig size.
I bet.
You know, so, but the biggest thing is just put it on their head, you know, and pay attention to that rate of fall. Because when they're, you know, they've got, you know, if my fist is that stump, that fish will get right up against that, and it might only be 6 inches under the surface. So you want to put that jig right against that stump, have it fall along it, and that fish will grab it after it drops 6 inches. If you're not paying attention, that you'll think you got bit, but you actually feel the fish spit it back out because it ate it on the fall.
Yeah.
So. You know, so it's not a whole lot different than what you're doing.
Attention to the fall.
Yeah, it's not a whole lot different than your flooded trees. It's just not in 12 foot of water.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not always 12 foot of water here. I mean, I like flipping that 6 to 7 foot. Mm-hmm. You know, they're a little bit higher in the water column, but I still catch them in that, you know, I catch them out of 15 foot sometimes.
Yeah.
They're not down in 15 foot. Yeah. They're up in that top 5 foot of the water column, but the trees are in 15.
It's a lot of times, I would say here, what probably equates as much to that as anything is, and I know they have this on Gunnersville and some on Chickamauga and stuff, but I know Gunnersville, they call them fishing the haystacks. You know, it's big haystack shaped columns of milfoil. You know, coming up out of 12 or 16 feet of water. We get it here in our deep natural lakes that have milfoil in them. And yeah, some days you've got, you know, they're not inside of the cover. They're not in the weeds. They're in the pockets between the weeds or on the very outside edge. And some days the fish are high in the water column. What I really like is the days where they're really reacting to fast moving jigs. So that's where I'll pull out like the 3/4 ounce Canterbury flipping jig, and I'll flip that and that faster fall. And that's one of the funnest bites where you know that thing takes 3 seconds to make it to bottom, and it seems like it only fell 2 feet. And you just click that reel shot and hammer on them. You know, it's basically the same thing, but you got to pay attention to that rate of fall and how fast, you know, when did it stop? Should it have stopped? And I've even had it here on some of those bites where we're flipping those big haystacks with 1 1/4 ounce jigs. You know, like a 1 1/4 ounce no jack punch jig or the 1 ounce no jack punch jig. The nice thing with those is if it's a cold front condition and those fish sink down to the base of those weeds, that big jig will get down there. You can do it with a Texas rig too. I'm a little partial to a jig. But you can get it down there and you can pop it and hop it, and then it goes back down and it stays clean. It doesn't, you know, some jigs are going to pick up vegetation, but that no jack punch jig, even though you're not really punching, really works good for that. So you want to talk about Riverwood? We're going
to talk about, since before we move on to Riverwood, since we're in flooded brush in that topic right now, do you fish much flooded brush? Shallow flooded brush?
Yep.
5 foot and less.
Yeah. So you're saying more like brush, like
like bushes.
Yeah, bushes where you're dealing with stuff. The
5 foot,
stalks
6
aren't
foot
any.
tall.
Yeah, and most of the stuff isn't any bigger than my pinky. Yep, I love that.
Exactly.
Absolutely, it's probably
So
my favorite flipping
same.
bite. Honestly,
Same.
Yeah.
It is to me too. And you're basically same baits, right? You're flipping the jig. You
Yep.
flip a tube.
Yep.
You flip a smallie beaver, stuff like that. I'm
Yeah.
going to give away a West Coast secret right now. And it's something that is not just a flipping bait. It's to actually, for the most part, here in San Diego, it's not a flipping bait. Guys will throw this thing out in 20, 30 foot of water, weightless.
Yeah.
You know what that is, Kurt?
That is that the Yamamoto or is that the actual Damiki one?
Yamamoto Fat Ica.
That's it. Yeah.
So, but this is how we'll fit. This is how I'll fish it. I don't know
Yeah.
how well you can see
Backwards.
this on the camera.
Yep, I can
I'm
see that
Texas
crappy
rigging
hook
this
you're
thing. I'm
using.
going. Yeah, I'm going in through the palm. It's like a palm tree, right?
Yeah.
I'm going
Yep.
in through the palm tree side or the palm side of it,
Yeah.
and this is one of the reasons I like this hook with this bait because it's angled out. With such a fat body bait,
Yep.
that angled out hook will bite them.
Yep.
But that's how I'm fishing it. And a lot of the time I'm fishing it weightless. Sometimes I'll throw a nail weight in there. But this is something that even weightless, if the cover is not too thick, you can just pitch this thing in there. It'll glide away from you. It'll hit the water. Let me see if I can get this right on the camera. It'll
Yeah.
hit the water and glide away from you like that
Yeah.
into the cover. So you can pitch to the front of cover, let it sink back in there, and just kind of shake the thing. It doesn't have a weight. You're almost fishing it. I'm not going to say like a Senko, but you're just shaking the thing, and the skirt is just kind of pulsing in the water.
Yeah.
Pull it out, pitch it to the other side of it, let it sink back in there, and just shake the thing. And that skirt's just doing this. Dude, in shallow wood, in shallow bushes specifically, absolutely, we have just murdered them on that bait. And that's not one that I talk about a lot.
Yeah.
And I don't think the rest of the
That's-
country is really using that bait, from what I know.
No. I mean, you see guys doing the what's it called? That bait, the Yamamoto what? Ica.
Ica.
Yeah. So they have that Ica rig or whatever.
4-inch
see,
fat
yeah,
Ica.
yeah. There's a lot of guys that talk about that. I've seen guys flip tubes backwards
Yeah.
because it'll glide too. I've seen guys do tubes that way.
hmm
One bait that I used to throw a lot, and it just got to the point where, like, if you can't get it, you can't get it. But the old Jackal cover craw. You remember that?
Yeah. Same idea. This has just got
Yeah.
a little bit more action with the skirt. Absolutely.
I'd push it.
We used to use
but
that too.
Cover craw.
But I think
had them
the
flat.
Ica does a little bit better job than the cover craw does.
Yeah. Yeah. The other bait I like around them bushes, and I don't know why, when I get around them flooded bushes, generally speaking, I don't look at a brush hog type bait as a colder water bait. But when we have those flooded bushes, we call it's like buckbrush usually. So it's the like red bushes. The bark on the stuff's like burgundy red. And for whatever reason, like I've always done good with that brush hog type of bait in that stuff with the lighter weight. Another bait that I've used a lot of times for that is a Zoom speed worm, not an ultra vibe speed worm, just the old fashioned speed worm. Don't make it, don't modify the paddle,
tail.
just paddle. I've done really good on that.
Yep.
But you know, I've gotten to be where I'm such a sort of on their head, and then I dictate my rate of fall. And especially that's where those bushes, when I'm flipping them, is probably the number one time that I pull line, that I do an actual true flip. And you're so fast in and out of all that stuff, just doing this and then back in, and this back in, that I'm just like a small compact beaver bait with a light hook. Because now you're not worrying about pitching it. You don't have to get that velocity. You're literally threading that needle and putting it right in there. A 1/4 ounce in a sweet beaver or a bulkier plastic that just makes that thing just get in there, because they can move around in that bush. That's not like
Yeah.
They're not in there as a current break or a giant. Again, like it's spring, so I want where the sun can beat in it, but they have the cover around it. And yeah, just get it in there and just let it do its thing as natural as possible seems to really work out well.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite types of flipping. I love it. We get very few opportunities here to do it, but when it's available, dude, that's all you're going to see me doing if it's there.
What I really enjoy about that, if no one's ever done it or been on a really good bite where they're really aggressive in them bushes, is when you can take like a 1/2 ounce jig, or 1/2 ounce Texas rig and really just go to town in there, and you flip in there and that bush just goes, and the water literally makes that sound, and you feel dunk, or you see the stuff, see the branches go boom, 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 and then all of a sudden you feel that thunk. That's what I love.
There's one bite that sticks out in my memory. It was a club tournament that I was fishing years ago, and that same tube bite with those big trees that were flooded, and this tree was probably in 8 foot of water. I needed one more bite, and I knew I only needed one more bite to win. I needed one good bite, and I had about an hour and a half left in the tournament, and I flipped my tube into the shade of this tree, and the whole freaking tree, the tree is like 8 foot wide, the whole tree goes, and I was like, oh shit. Wind down, hammer this thing. Is a 4.5 pounder, and I knew when I boated that fish, I won the tournament. And just that memory of I need it. That tree shook. You hammer them, and it's just like that. I will never forget that memory because it's one of the coolest bites you will ever have. Frog bites, they're awesome, but when a whole tree shakes, like
it's a tree shaker. Yeah,
it's a tree shaker.
We get that too with when you're fishing them toolies. Especially if you're fishing like cattail edges, where they're like the cattails sometimes are growing on a bog or whatever, and you flip in there and the whole thing just like that because something just moved and made it. Anytime you see the structure move, the card cover move, then it's that instant spike of adrenaline. Like it's like a bird dog going on point. It's like shit's about to go down.
It's going to happen. It's not a surprise like a frog bite. It's about to go down.
Yeah.
That's fun, dude. It's so much fun.
We'll talk about it more in depth, but like the undercut banks, like you saw some of the clay banks, but you seen they were out of water, but you could see how like some of them there's this big shelf and a big scoop out of it, and when the water's the right height and you got that little foot and a half, 2 foot of void you can get under. And your bait will sort of hang in there, and you hear a smallmouth just, on your Texas rig that just got thrown up there. There's nothing more exciting than that either, but there's nothing more heartbreaking than when you hear all of that and all that splashing, and there ain't nothing on your bait. You just, You don't get that when you're flipping bushings. Usually if the bush shakes, you're getting bit. You're on their head. They're going to eat it.
Exactly. You're in there.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So you want to talk about
we'll talk
wood
a little
now?
bit about that river flipping.
River flipping.
Yeah.
All right. River flipping. Yeah, obviously, a lot of guys don't do it. I mean, I think it's getting more popular down south where so many of these guys are going up, up towards the dam on Lay Lake or Logan Martin and all that stuff. You're getting guys that are in current with wood, and man, there's just so much stuff you got to deal that I can't probably get into today with that as far as line management and all this other stuff because your line's drifting under a tree and this and that. All I can tell you is choosing your casting angle matters. You do not want, if at all possible, you do not want to make a pitch that's going to cause your bait to go around a tree and then down under a tree. Because a fish is going to grab it, and he's not going to swim back that way. He's not going to go upstream for you. He's going to try to come back at your boat half the time. And now you're setting the hook over the log, under the log. It's just, you got to really try to play that game and know how to do it. Some days you have to, because some days that's how you have to present the bait to get bit. Like you almost have to hang it off that tree. But very, very critical, you use fluorocarbon. I use the same 2 rods I was talking about before. It's reading those casting angles and how figuring out where those fish position. Just like when we're talking about, vertically the fish can be up or down. When they're in main river wood or current, whether it's a cut bank or a wood or this, they might be tight to the bank. They might be off the tip of the cover. A lot of it is dictated by just the weather conditions or the amount of current flow. It's a lot of looking for me, I'm always looking where there's a seam coming off the backside of a log. A fish will sit in that seam behind that current break. And if you don't fish current much, a seam is where you look at the water and it looks like there's a piece of line across the top of the water because there's one section of water is moving faster than the other, and you look like what looks like monofilament laying on the surface of the water, and it's just literally two different speeds of current meeting right there in the river channel. Keeping your bait in that on your cover really matters, and that's usually where they'll be positioned relative to that on that cover. But it's not a whole lot different than fishing the tules and bulrushes and that stuff. You're going to be over logs, in bushes. A lot of times you're I feel like river current fishing wood is the combination of all this stuff, because there's going to be a pitch that you make because it's a big outside corner and your bait's just going to fall, and you got to know, well, like it should have hit bottom already. It's really all the other things combined on a per cast basis, because it's really the junk fishing of flipping.
Yeah.
And in current, I don't like using big floppy big baits at all. I like stuff that doesn't move a whole lot. Generally they're not feeding a lot on bluegills and stuff in those conditions, because the bluegills aren't sitting out there in that current. It's a lot more crayfish and shiners and that type of stuff. So I'm definitely sticking way more to your jigs or your beavers. If the fish are more relative to bottom, or they're sitting on those clay banks, like when you sat here, those undercut banks or shelved banks, that's where a crayfish bait, like a subtle type, natural profile, minimal action crayfish bait will work really good. But I don't know. As much as I do it so much and feel like it's its own thing, the more I talk about all the other things, it's like on a daily basis, every little thing that I'm doing for all those other flipping techniques is all used in when I'm fishing that river wood, because I might be flipping a tree that's sloped off the bank into 12 foot of water. And it's like fishing the trees, the flooded trees you're saying, except for the tree's not vertical anymore. It's 45-degree angle downhill.
That's the biggest thing that I noticed flipping with you on that river is there's so many inconsistencies with the cover. Yeah, it's all wood, but it's all different because all that wood got pushed in with storms that you had, prior.
Yeah.
And it's all positioned different. You got one coming in this way, you got one coming in this way, one might be coming straight in off the bank. And then we were flipping vegetation too. Those smallies were up in vegetation, up next to wood. Like you had a tree coming into the water with vegetation, whatever that vegetation was. I don't know. It wasn't rice.
No, it was just canary grass. It was just canary grass on that because the river came up and flooded the grass that grows on the bank naturally. It's just
so you had a tree coming into the water with that grass in it, around the bottom of it, and you flip in the middle of that tree because then that fish is sitting in it. It's real inconsistent. So I see exactly what you're talking about, having to pick your shot.
And sometimes it's a tree or a log that's been laying in there for as long as I've been fishing. I mean, there's trees where I fish in a river that have been there my whole life, my whole fishing career. They have been there. And some of them lay parallel with the current off the bank. And you're flipping to the edge of it and just letting the current sweep it along that log. And you don't want a real heavy bait because it's just going to go there and it's instantly plummet to the bottom. So that's why I have 6 or 7 flipping sticks on the deck of my boat, because I'll have a 3/8 ounce and a 1/2 ounce and a 9/16 jig and a 7/16 jig and a punch rig. And because the junk fishing of flipping is going on in that day. And I've seen it where if that log, you look at it at a glance and you're like, oh, it's just laying parallel with the current. If it's canted a little bit away from you, so it's like, let's say the current's going this way, it's going to my left, and that tree is pitched towards the boat slightly, more than likely the fish will be on the back side of it. If it's pitched towards the bank a little bit, now the current break is on the boat side of that tree, and it could be the slightest angle. At a glance, it just looks straight. But that will dictate whether you
Because
get bit on that back side or front side. Yep. And a lot of times it's down from where you're actually fishing that tree. You see it here, but what can't you see? That's one thing why I love 360, because I'm constantly, that thing just does its job. I don't have to point a trolling motor anywhere, and I can see stuff. There's times I'm flipping stuff that I can't visually see, but I see it on my 360. And then you make a flip or two exploratory, like, oh, okay, yep, that's where it feels, and then you start flipping cover you can't see. That or you drive out when
now,
the water's...
One thing, you and I haven't talked about this since we went fishing. You and I haven't talked about this since we went fishing together flipping.
Yeah.
We started flipping a jig, and we were hammering them flipping a jig.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it started slowing down. You picked up a tube. And because I do not flip a jig almost ever, I was having fun flipping that jig. I wanted to keep catching them flipping the jig.
Yeah. Did I flip
you
a
went to
tube or a
town on
beaver?
them flipping the tube. And you
Was
were
it
flipping
a
the tube.
beaver? Okay.
And it was a tube. And I was reluctant to pick up that tube because I wanted to keep jacking them on the jig.
Yeah.
And you kept, and eventually I said, screw it, I'm going to start flipping the tube. And I went back to catching them on the tube.
Yeah.
In what instance, what made you, maybe not that specific day, what would make you make that change from the jig to a tube? And what do you think you recognized that day?
I want to clarify, I guess, for sure. We were in the tin boat catching smallmouth?
We were in the tin boat catching smallmouth.
Okay. Yep.
1 to 2 foot of water.
Generally speaking, when it comes to smallmouth, I don't fish a jig that much. I feel like they eat more primarily a smaller, more streamlined forage base. Like there's times where they're going to throw up a 5-inch rusty crayfish, but one where we were fishing, and two just smallmouth in general, they seem to be more. They want something the size of that 4-inch tube, or a beaver bait. Like this is a bulky tube.
Yeah.
But not near as bulky as that, right?
Yep.
So we would have been fishing something like this. We were probably pitching around the Luke Clausen compact pitching. This I can catch fish, smallmouth on, but I'm definitely got more confidence in something like this flip in, or, my go-to day in, day out is going to be a sweet beaver. It's 4-inch bait. I always split the ends. Just a little more action.
Mm-hmm.
I like, but that's what I'm going to generally start with when it comes to smallmouth. Largemouth, on the other hand, is a little different story. But so smallmouth, if they're really active, it's fun to catch them on a jig. But I generally don't start with it. If you told me, all right, fish your most confidence bait that day, it wouldn't have been a jig. I wouldn't have flipped a jig. I like catching them on a jig as much as you were that day, but once that sun gets up and they get a little more discerning and everything, I think they get a little bit more
picky.
They want that more they want more of a streamlined bait, it seems like. I also in current a lot of times, especially where we were fishing there, the current's ripping. That current's pretty strong.
It's ripping.
And when this jig comes through that strong a current, it might be tumbling like this at a 45-degree angle to that current, and now that skirt's all drifting opposite of the angle of the hook, and I feel like it's not as efficient your whole cast as far as presenting a natural look or image in the water.
That makes a lot of sense.
So I may be completely wrong on that, but that's also why I feel like I just never do that good in the fall on the river throwing a skirted football jig, because it's sitting there wherever I'm fishing it and the current's blowing the skirt back against the jig head, and then but I can throw a tube down there and it seems like it gets bit like nobody's business, with a tube jig head. The other thing I do feel like if the fish are more bait fish oriented, so I'm going to talk about shiners, mud minnows, not a crayfish. This might sound silly to a lot of people, but that's where I'm going to like this tube better. If I'm seeing them chase more bait fish, and the bait fish in our river, we don't have shad. But this inherently, no matter what weight, how heavy you fish on it, darts more. It moves more like a bait fish in the water. You got that thing on bottom and you give it a little pop of your rod tip, and then goes up and it sort of does one of those things. It's almost like a flipping version of a Zoom Super Fluke. In that
exactly.
regard. And I think, so if I notice that they're chasing more a bait fish type profile bait, or I see them coming out darting after stuff and chasing stuff on the surface, if I'm going to flip a tube, because it's going to give me more that type of action versus a beaver or something else. And it's really, I don't, especially for smallmouth, I rarely throw something flappy. Rarely throw anything flappy. Like they got to almost really be like, I got to feel like we get what we call a crayfish spawn here. And you can tell because you'll get out there some days and all of a sudden you see all kinds of crayfish just sitting right on the edge of the water in certain places because they're actually breeding. They're spawning. And then I will use something like that scown bug, this little deal, because I can pitch it up on the bank and then slowly crawl it in. And just if you fish it real slow, it's got the little. Did I say it right that time? Scown bug.
You got it this time.
Yeah, I appreciate it. But yeah, then largemouth though, then it's just a matter of some days they don't want the bulk and some days they go back to that beaver. And a lot of times I just have to fish the beaver more than anything because where I'm fishing, I don't know if that's going to be a smallmouth or a largemouth bite. And I've witnessed it too many times where I can fish in the front of the boat and just nail largemouth. Guy in the back of the boat that doesn't flip a jig, flips a tube or a beaver, he's catching largemouth and smallmouth. And I won't get bit hardly at all with the jig. So, history has told me that if I'm fishing smallmouth, there's a lot of times I should put that jig down.
Yeah. You got anything to add to that before I ask you your special rigging question?
I don't know. Do we want to go into docks? Flipping docks?
I have no input on docks whatsoever. We don't have docks here. The only docks I think I've ever fished in my life was Clear Lake, and I am not good at it. I'm not going to claim to even know what the hell I'm talking about with it. So you cover that real quick.
Well, let's save that for a different episode because I got a guest that was supposed to be here tonight that isn't here tonight. That he is definitely, as much as he's a really good flipper, he's a really, really good dock fisherman, and I've learned a lot from him. And I hope to think that he learned some from me. But yeah,
then let's do a whole dock fishing episode with him.
Yeah.
Why don't you go into your rigging? You've teased this before. That you want to reveal how you peg a sinker.
Now you guys, well, you've got the normal pegging sitting there handy to you. So why don't you show like everybody?
This is what 99% of the population is using, including myself.
Yeah. I do not own a single pack of bobber stops. Not one. There is not one in this garage. There is not one in my boat. I refused to use them. I used them for years, got mad, went back, stopped doing it. I think it's more impressive when I throw it show you on a punch rig. So one, and I'll show you on another one, but I rarely want my sinker touching my bait. So you can see there is line between that sinker and where that bait would be. I'll rig a bait on here quick.
He's got about a half inch of line between the sinker and the bait right now.
And you're going to go, well, how does that work?
At least.
How does that work? Because I don't have a bobber stop. So how does that sinker stay up there? As your bobber stop, what does your sinker do? Slams down into your knot, slams down into your bait, pushes the nose of your bait down.
Mm-hmm.
So there's my straight shank. Oh, sorry, wrong direction. There's my straight shank with my sinker a little bit above my beaver. One, so it also maintains that bait isn't canted, is it? That is perfectly straight. No. I can push that bait straight to where it's pretty much touching, straight up and down still. So that sinker wobbles around. I can move that up even further. Now that sinker more free feel.
Real quick.
Yeah.
Real quick. You're snell knotted, right?
I am snell knotted.
So he's snell knotted so that if your weight is up against that hook, it's going to make that hook kick up, kick vertical. It's going to kick to the side. So without a snell knot, that's not as much of an issue. But
all right. Now, if I set the hook, this sinker definitely goes. See, that's going to do that, right?
Yes.
I set the hook. That's what's going to happen.
Now he's at a 45.
It's going to mash down there, and that leaves 45. But because I truly peg it like we did for forever, that bait can swing around and move free. So now I got this is my punch rig. This bait's on bottom. Fish comes, tries to suck it up. It does not have to pivot that weight. It just grabs it. And this is peg tight enough that it's hard to move. There's silicone skirt material in there.
I was just going to say, you're using silicone skirt material.
Big skirt material. But anybody that's flipped a fair amount is also going to have experience. They set the hook, and their bobber stops 3 feet up your line after the hook's set, right? You glitched out for me, so... So yeah, like we've all experienced that bobber stop shoved way up your line. With this, it goes way up your line. It don't come back down. So now when you're punching, you don't have a 1 ounce weight crashing all the way back down to your hook when you're trying to fight that fish. And I've witnessed it where that weight has come down, smashed that hook, and I felt the pop of it, and then the fish came off. Can I 100% guarantee you that knocked that hook out?
Yeah.
No. But it felt the same way as when I take the heel of my hand and go like this on the hook, and then the fish was off. So you also don't have your sinker spinning around your line like this the whole time. It's locked up. I get way less abrasion from my sinker doing this. So I basically turned that tungsten sinker into a rubber cord sinker. So that's all the reasons why I do it. I feel like everything that I want my bait to do and what I want to happen after I set the hook on a fish, that bobber stop I'm fighting it a lot of the time. We're truly pegging that sinker. I'm not. And I literally have, I buy tabs of skirt material and cut them in half. So like that punch weight has 7 strands of skirt material in it. And what you do, and there won't be lines through this, but this is a fly tying bobbin, and you can use the double overed piece of fishing line if you want. I always run through the nose of the bullet sinker, through the bullet sinker. Normally, you'd have the line through this. And I count out my 7
strands. Show us in the camera.
Yep, hang on while I'm counting my strands. So you'd run that bobbin through there with the line for your fishing line through there. There. Let me just get line. So run. Do this a million times without a camera, and it's easy. But when you're trying to show it on camera, it gets hard. So you got your line. You got your bullet sinker rigged up on there, right? You tie on your hook. And I'm not going to sit here and say I like snell knots. I run a snell knot on my straight shanks. That's the only time I run a snell knot. I like them. They work for me. I know a bunch of people that don't like them. I've seen people have issues with them. I'm not going to tell you which one you should use or not. You use what you like.
With a hook like that, with a straight shank hook, I like a snell knot too.
Yeah.
When I'm flipping.
Yeah. Will say that I always leave a pretty long tag on my snell knot. All right, so I got my bullet sinker and my snell knot. You can see, like, I pull on it, it's gonna bend that hook quite a bit, right? Like, that's why I like the snell knot for me and my flipping. It works for me, even though I'm a slackliner. So then I take that bobbin or a piece of fishing line looped over, and I run it through that sinker. I've had this particular bobbin since like 2001. They're cheap at the tackle shop. And then there's my 7 strands of skirt material. I lube it up good, and you just pull it through that sinker. And don't go too fast, because you want it. If you go too fast, it's going to rip. So I've got that. Yeah. I've just pulled it through there. And what you want to do is pull it enough. You want some strands sticking out the top of it. If you can see that. You want them strands of that skirt sticking out the top, because if you ever take this sinker off, you want to be able to have something to grab and pull them out.
He's got about an 1/8 inch of skirt material sticking out of the nose of that tungsten weight, and the rest of the skirt material sticking out of the bottom.
And then I just trim the bottom. I just fold the line over on its side and then trim the bottom off. And if I ever need to take that skirt material out, I just pinch the top, pull it with the other hand. I will tell you, don't do it while it's on that hook, because you'll pull hard enough and jab yourself in the hand. But that's on there. Like, it takes force to move it. And I've still had it, even with 3/8 and 1/2 ounce weights. I've set the hook, you get the fish halfway to the boat, and my sinker's 3 feet up my line. Well, every time that sinker's doing that, that's more abrasion. It's just constantly sliding up, down, up, down, up, down. It's sliding down and hitting the hook top. It's just, I want to be able to take my bait, put my sinker in front of it like that. Like, I think this is the right hook for a smallie beater. Here, I'll do this. I'll do the scrounge bug, or I just call it a scrounge bug.
Scound.
But there, once again, that bait is straight. I push my sinker down right to there. It almost works the freedom like a swing head, right?
When you held it up before, I was going to say it's just like a swing head.
So
except that weight will slide up the line now.
Right. So if I flip this into a tree and that sinker falls through, but for the bait to get through the tree, it's got to pivot this way or that way, it can. If that sinker gets pushed tight to there, and it does happen. I get hung up on stuff and this happens. Well, you're banging that thing through and it's rigid. That's what I like about this, where it's there. It's just always there. It takes a fair amount of force. About the only time hardly it moves is when I set the hook. That's when it'll get smashed into that. And then again with that snell knot, I set the hook, boom, that hook just jams out like that. And that's why I snell knot it.
Yep.
But if you ever feel like your sinker's constantly beating up the nose of your bait and causing you to go through baits, well, there you go. Quit using the bobber stop. That's what got me. It was punching. Having an 1.25 ounce sinker every time I'd flip into something, and it's just constantly, just every time I lift it up to the mat, that sinker's smashing on it. With this, I can lift up, hit the weight. and my bait's still free swinging. So there's bites I've had where they're biting it right on the bottom side of the mat. I bring the weight up to the mat. They try to suck it in. I'm holding the weight there. They can suck in that bait from any direction and the hook will move. But if you pull up tight enough with 1.25 ounces weight and a bobber stop, that bait can't move. It can't pivot. Mm-hmm. So it is easy. Bobber stops are super easy.
Yeah, but I wouldn't. Yeah, it's more convenient because it's already on your. It's already got a loop. You can slide it on, super simple. But if you're pitching and flipping one weight all day long, it's worth the time. I can see the advantages for sure. I don't do it.
Like this is.
I will start if we ever get any water in San Diego. I will start for sure.
I mean, I'm having to pull this out. It's so tight. I have to pull it all the pliers.
Yeah.
You know,
it's like you said, a rubber core sinker.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's smart.
Yeah, that's man, and I really like it for punching. That's probably the biggest place. I mean, if you're fishing pretty light Texas rig stuff, it probably don't make a whole lot of difference. But it's definitely a different deal when you're punching, I think.
Well, as convenient as it is to slide on a bobber stop, they move. They slide up. You're going to reposition that bobber stop 10, 15 times in a full day of fishing, if not more. That won't move anywhere near as much. So as convenient as it is to slide a bobber stop on there, it's less convenient throughout the day. So it's a wash as far as convenience goes in my mind.
Yeah. And I've had guys say that they run a double bobber stop. Like I know the 6 cents bobber stops are a little bigger, a little heavier duty. And I know guys that'll say, well, they bobber stop the top and the bottom. So they put one on, then their sinker, then another one on their line. But I feel like then that's more dinking around. Like I never dink with a bobber stop. My sinker's stopped, so I just move my sinker around.
They make some bobber stops that are they're pointy on the front and then they're tapered down where it actually goes down into the weight, where it kind of acts like what you're doing, but it's not the same. It doesn't go the whole length of the weight.
No. Do you remember the original, like, nowadays it seems like I don't think many people remember even True Tungsten, but they were the first company to do tungsten, and they had the tungsten T-pegs or whatever they called them. And it was like half a bobber stop like we're used to seeing, but then it had a little step and then it went way down there. And those worked great with True Tungsten because they matched the size that the hole in the True Tungsten was.
Exactly.
And those worked pretty good. But with big weights, it would still, like, the weight would go up your line and then it would fall back down your line. And I don't know. I mean, I know guys that still run small beads underneath their tungsten sinker to protect their hook and their knot and all this stuff. And I'm just like, man, if you just peg it in this way, you don't have to deal with any of that stuff. And for me, again, it's like, I don't want my sinker sliding up and down, but I truly believe whether you're running a bobber stop or doing what I'm doing, I believe in let room for that bait to free swing behind your weight. You know, especially in current. Like if you're just dipping right on their head, if you're just pulling line and you're going straight down and straight back up and out again, like, yeah, it probably doesn't matter near as much. And obviously you don't have that with a jig. But that's also somewhat with the reason why a jig works the way it does and the Texas rig works the way it does at times. So like I said, that I've got 2 of those that I bought in like 2001 and I still have the same ones. Those are, you asked about my good luck charms or, you know, superstitions. Those are sort of one of those things. I actually thought I lost one for a while, and the guy that bought my boat from me after having it for 3 years is like, hey, I got this weird little tool in the cup holder in my compartment. Do you know what that's for? I'm like, yeah, that's my rigging tool. I need that back. So I even lost it sold it with a boat, and then still got it back.
That's funny.
But yeah, and if anybody's got more questions, man, I'll try to do a video where it's just my hands and you can see a little more what that is. But yeah, the only thing I will say, I mean, living rubber works really good because it won't break ever. But don't use skirt material with metal flake in them. Buy straight black, because otherwise it will break easier and you just won't be able to peg it as tight.
Got it.
So
that makes sense.
And yeah, it's usually 6 strands. Anything under 3/4 an ounce is usually 6 strands, 7 if you want it really, really tight. But just keep in mind it's going to be that much harder to get the pegging material back out. But on the bigger weights, it's 7. Some of the stuff I have, I don't know what brand it was, but some of the stuff I got, it requires 8 strands. And that's getting doubled over in there. So it's a lot of material in there.
Yeah, just depending on what brand of weight you're using, he's talking about, different strands or different size of weights and different brands.
So,
you're just going to have to play with what works with what you have.
Yeah. And I think you can buy a 100 count pack of those skirt tabs. There's 22 strands on each tab. And I cut them in half. So that's 200 of 22 strands.
Probably last you the rest of your life.
Yeah, it's $11. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. How much of them bobber stops nowadays? $5 for a pack of 20?
I don't even know.
Yeah.
I get the VMC discount because of what is it? Bass University, so I get a little bit of a discount, but
yeah,
skirt material is cheaper and more efficient for sure.
Yeah. I think it just does more. I don't know about more efficient. It just allows you for more options.
No, it's more efficient. You're not dicking with it all day.
Yeah, you still got to slide.
It'll stay put better.
Yeah. I mean, I have to move my sinker back in place every time I set the hook. If I get my bait lodged up, I have to grab my bait and pull my sinker back up the line. So it's not like it's tinker free, but
the biggest thing in that regard is the weight does not slide back down. And that's where you touched on it a little bit. If you're throwing a big enough weight and that weight slides up during a fighting a fish and you get vertical on that fish and that weight's up here because that fish is shaking, as soon as that line gets tight, that weight's going to come back down. It's going to punch your hook.
Yeah, you got an ounce and a quarter. Yeah, you got an ounce and a quarter plug knocker on your line.
Exactly. You're punching that hook right back out of that fish's mouth and it's gone. And you're probably not even going to realize what happened.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
Yeah. If there's one thing, like if someone's like, well, if I only wanted to do it for one certain thing, what would it be for? I was absolutely punching. 100%. Yeah. I would strongly recommend that you always punch that way with it. If you if you're flipping around a 1/4 ounce bullet sinker, throw a bobber stop on there. Let the bobber stop right a 1/2 inch above your sinker. You're probably not going to notice the difference. But you start getting into those heavier weights, especially, or like I said, where I want to ensure that my bait is trailing behind my sinker, free flowing in current. I think it makes a huge difference that bait can sort of flop around and do what it wants. So that's why I do it all the time. I don't think guys understand like the free rig thing's gotten to be popular, but I mean, when me and you started bass fishing, like remember the argument all the time? Oh, I peg, I don't peg. Like that was a big thing. Now no one talks about that. I
know.
I feel like pegging it the way that I peg it, it's not a toothpick. Like we did that for years, but it's allowing you to have that free movement behind your sinker, even if you wanted to put that thing an inch above your bait. And I also can be out on a ledge and be like, you know what, where's my big flipping stick? I got a 1/2 ounce on it, and I can take that sinker and go 16 inches up my line and launch it out on a ledge or a point or something. I got a makeshift Texas rig right there instantly. I've done that on the river on washouts. Slow, shallow stretches where you get a little depression. I've just slid that thing up 16 inches and thrown that little crayfish bait in the middle of the dang river. Make a few casts.
Carolina rig.
Yep, instant Carolina rig. If I feel like after that I should rig up a Carolina rig, I will, but it does the job for a little bit.
Yeah. If you get bit on it, you can switch up.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you got anything else?
I don't think so. I mean, like I said, rods I use just a couple too, and reels. I don't even know if I want to get into the argument about gear ratios and reels.
Yeah, let's not go there. Everybody's got their preference.
Yeah.
I go high speed. Everything I fish for the most part is 8-to-1. Me and Kurt have had lengthy conversations, but you know what? Let's do a whole episode on gear ratios, and we'll cover the whole spectrum. We'll go cranking, flipping. What do we use in certain aspects of fishing? Gear ratios only. I think that's a good one.
And I will say this though, right now, as time goes on and the reels keep getting better, and you see these gearboxes change and everything, there is a huge difference in the torque power of a high gear ratio reel compared to 15 years ago.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, so yeah, I think there's a lot to be said there. I mean, I think some of these reels at 7-to-1 have more torque than what a lot of the reels did at 6-2-to-1 we used for forever.
Agreed. Let's not get too deep into it, but we'll make that an episode. I think that's a good one. But if you don't have anything else, we'll stop it here. I got my first softball game that I'll be playing in probably 8 years, and I'll go tear a couple ACLs tonight, and we won't have any scheduling issues anymore because I won't have any softball games because I won't be able to walk.
What are you doing signing up for softball?
All the baseball dads, dude. All the baseball dads got together, or a couple of us, and we're like, hey, men's softball's coming up. Let's put a team together. Let's go have some fun ourselves instead of yell at kids for 3 hours. So we're gonna go have some drinks and go hit the ball around.
You're gonna go play beer league softball.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That's why you're behaving yourself drinking during tonight's podcast.
I've had a couple. I'm gonna go drink some more tonight, but I've had a couple.
Yeah, but it isn't your whiskey like normal.
No, it's not the whiskey. I wasn't gonna get smashed. I'll get smashed at the game.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah. I don't think there's anything else. I mean, I would like to see with doing these type episodes, we're going to get more into doing this. This was something that we talked about a bunch when we decided we were going to do this podcast, that we want to have this type of stuff. We want to see questions. If we talked about something and you feel like we skimmed over something and need more information, you think we're wrong, tell us why we're wrong. Got questions, want to see them, love to. I mean, every time you got a question, that's another thing we can cover. And if you got a question, 100%. I'm sure there's 20 other people got the same question. So
we got more episodes planned already. I don't think we have anything lined up this second, but we have more episodes planned. We have ideas of our own, but we want more.
Yeah. And
if Kurt and I can't cover a topic that you want us to cover, we'll get the right people on.
Yeah.
You know, Kurt knows enough guys in the industry. I know a few people that we'll get the right people on to talk about stuff and really cover a topic well.
Yeah.
So like, comment, subscribe, comment. Let us know what you want to hear. All right.
Yep. Sounds good.
I'm going to hit the button.
Okay.
I'm going to go have fun.
Later, bye.
Peace.